These stories coming up next on San Diego Insider Magazine.
It's mid-morning at the world's busiest port of entry. Inside the Mexican consulate's office, a 3-year-old girl with big brown eyes clings to a teddy bear and waits. 17 hours later, the little girl's mom is located in San Diego.
Crime filled these streets. Police visited Q Avenue almost daily.
30 calls for service in a month.
For the last 30 years, Joseph has been a world-renowned photographer.
I've never had a desire to do anything else.
And so it goes, along Old Highway 80, at Flynn Springs Country Store.
Antiques, cheese, and candy.
And that's it.
That's it.
Now, from Channel 4 San Diego, Laura Castaneda, Jeannie Rodden, Corey Voss, and Dennis Morgino. This is San Diego Insider Magazine.
Tens of thousands of people try to sneak across this fence every year. That part you knew. What you may not realize is how many thousands of them are children without their parents, some as young as toddlers. Just like the adults, these children have to be processed to see whether they can stay in the U.S. or must be sent back. And as Laura Castaneda reports, the choices for authorities are often difficult and complex.
It's mid-morning at the world's busiest port of entry. Inside the Mexican consulate's office, a 3-year-old girl with big brown eyes clings to a teddy bear and waits. We can't show you her face because she's a minor. The little girl is one of 6 children being detained. She and the others picked up by the U.S. Border Patrol or Immigration Service as undocumented immigrants with no parents in sight. Here in San Diego, the Mexican consulate's office interviewed nearly 3,000 kids like them last year. Many familiar faces.
15 to 20%, probably we see them 3-4 times.
Once the INS learns the children are Mexican citizens, as in the case of the 3-year-old, the Mexican consulate steps in.
We try to be as gentle and nice with them as we can. We know they have already gone through something traumatic. We want them to have confidence in us.
Those caught at night, like the little girl, sleep here in a chair in an INS waiting room until the next day.
It is not the proper, let's say, place to spend the night for a minor, but it's been like that the past few years.
If the child is caught before 4 in the afternoon, their paperwork is processed right away. Many of them return to Mexico that day, but it doesn't always happen.
We try to adhere to a 12-hour rule, but it's no more than 24 hours to be down there. And then what we try to do is put them in a detention facility if it's going to be long-term.
It turns out the smuggler is a friend of the girl's mother. Using a fake birth certificate, she tried to pass the child off as her own.
The officer asked me, who's the child? And I go, she's my daughter. And he looked at papers and he goes, okay. So he went up to her and asking her questions. What is your mother? And the girl didn't answer.
17 hours later, the little girl's mom is located in San Diego. She hears her mother's voice.
Señora, ¿sí tiene un familiar que pudiera venir por ella? Porque la niña sí la extraña mucho.
Some situations are very difficult because sometimes the parents are already in the U.S. without documents, and they can't leave the country to get their children. So kids have to remain in our custody until the parents can get them, or we must send them to a social service agency in Tijuana.
According to the INS, smuggling children through the port is becoming more common, as parents already here illegally try to reunite their families. These INS photos show how children are being hidden in compartments inside cars, vans, and trucks.
And one reason is that it seems to be a choice for smugglers because it's safe. It appears to be safer than to try to pass a child through the mountain.
But many still do try to cross through the desert and mountains, like this 14-year-old boy from Mexico who crossed in the East County.
I was thinking about running, but I didn't want to abandon my sister. So I stayed behind and I just gave up.
The Border Patrol reports only 11 children arrested trying to cross through the mountains so far this year, half as many as last year. No matter how they cross, if they get caught, it's either back to the consulate of their native country or an INS detention facility like this one near Alpine. The children come from all over the globe. Social workers say they are living in better conditions here than at home.
And they tell their parents, you know, that I went to the doctor, they're teaching me how to speak English, I get 3 meals a day, there's hot water, I take a shower with hot water. So it's amazing to hear those things because we take them for granted a lot of the times. There's a typical bedroom in here.
There are only 29 beds and 2 facilities in San Diego. The INS says with rapid turnover, that's enough. But immigration advocates like Lilia Velasquez say it isn't.
They have no space at, the 2 facilities that they have for housing minor children, that they have no choice but to take them to juvenile hall. And of course, this is very difficult for those children who don't speak the language, and they will be housed in the same cell with juvenile delinquents. This is not what we want.
We do not advocate that, and we don't do that by policy.
But the manager at one of the facilities, Southwest Key, admits every once in a while the system fails.
We had another minor who was placed here, and he was at juvenile hall in Los Angeles. He was serving a sentence for robbery. And INS didn't know this, but he told us this information, so we shared this with our officer, and he was removed.
Safety is just one concern of California Senator Dianne Feinstein. That's why she proposed a bill recently which would strip the INS of its authority to handle unaccompanied minors. Instead, she wants to create an Office of Children's Services under the umbrella of the Justice Department. The INS says that's not necessary.
Recently, we created the Office of Juvenile Affairs to deal with that.
We have that love-hate relationship with the immigrant in the United States.
Sister Ann Durst runs Casa Cornelia, a nonprofit agency providing free legal services to children. She supports Feinstein's measure, saying the current system was never designed for children.
Unless they're represented, it puts the court in a catch-22 situation, because if they're too young, they can't take a plea. And if they can't locate family to get counsel or whatever, these children prior to our program could sometimes languish.
Remember the 3-year-old girl? Her mother never showed up to claim her. So after 2 days of waiting, she was handed over to a social service shelter in Tijuana.
Here we have children, and that's a universal. That's a universal, and we should be mindful of that.
Laura, it seems the big question is what happens if they do break up the INS like they're talking about?
If the INS breaks up, you can bet that there's going to be a major restructuring, and I think all involved, as long as it brings attention to this issue, I think everyone would agree something needs to be done.
Thanks, Laura. When we come back, you've heard the phrase, take back our streets. Stick around to see one of the best examples we've ever seen, the rebirth of a national city hellhole. The City Council recently acknowledged that San Diego is facing a housing crisis, no doubt about it. Just last month, it endorsed a program to force builders to construct affordable housing citywide or pay a fee. Some experts estimate we need about 3 times as much affordable housing as we have right now. Seems like an impossible task, but it can be done. Here's one success story that comes from what used to be the worst part of South County.
This tranquil scene wouldn't have played out on Q Avenue in National City 3 years ago. Ice cream wasn't on the menu here then.
There you go, 75.
Carlos Macias knew it.
Before, there's a lot of police come. People, they don't pay for me, my merchandise. That's why I stopped to come.
Drugs were what kids wanted. Crime filled these streets.
There was tons of vandalism, cars, drugs. We had a lot of little kids into drugs.
Police visited Q Avenue almost daily.
It would not be unusual to have, say, 30 calls for service in a month.
Graffiti was everywhere. This phone and the nearby city park was drug deal central.
You know, a lot of the gangs would come out and hang out there and do their drug deals and then threaten residents, and that was a major problem.
And And the 16 apartment buildings on the street were falling apart.
The owners had just, sucked the life out of them, didn't put anything in.
Paseo del Sol, this is Marta. How can I help you?
Martha Lopez has lived here 17 years.
Rough. Actually, it was rough. At that time, I only had one baby, and he couldn't go outside to play. He had to stay inside.
Today, Martha works at the leasing office, giving advice to potential residents, because now 100 people are on the waiting list to move in. And the hellhole that used to be called simply Q Avenue is now called Paseo del Sol.
Paseo del Sol is an affordable housing community that we acquired and renovated. It has actually provided affordable housing to working people in the city at a very high quality.
But the road to redevelopment was a bumpy one and costly. The price tag on this shiny new community, $12 million. National City came up with $6.5 million. The rest was raised through the nonprofit agency Southern California Housing. Spending all that money in one place stirred up a lot of controversy 3 years ago. But what you see isn't all of what you get.
Anybody can come in that's experienced and build or renovate apartments. It's not hard. The component that we brought in was the social component and the social services.
Services like free computer time in the community center and daily classes for adults and kids. This one's called Boys Talk.
Like what people say to you, does that affect how you feel about yourself?
Like if I don't like myself, I can be friends with him because he's gonna be my enemy.
When you feel mad, you could talk to someone and express feelings.
They got to be strong-minded. They can't let other people get to them.
Classes are sponsored by community groups like Hope Through Housing.
You'll see graffiti and crime naturally drop as we bring some of the programs in and do more of education and empowerment type things.
And Raimundo, he's a nice guy to get along with, nice kid. And Marcos, he's cool.
You can make it as pretty as you want on the outside, but if you're not dealing with some of the challenges and issues within the families that may be taking place, true change isn't going to happen.
Wasn't no lady who swallowed her?
The bookmobile visits now, and a rousing game of flag football is a common sight. Teresa Lopez has lived here 3 years now.
I have carrots, onions, stewed beef.
She invites her family more often.
Yes, this is for my nephew's birthday.
It wasn't always the case. Her first reaction to the redevelopment?
I thought it was a joke. It was impossible. It was actually impossible to do it.
But she decided to stick around.
Just want to see the miracle. Yeah, I want to see the miracle. And actually, they did a pretty good job.
Now, she has a brand new place.
And I have a big window, which I didn't have before in my other apartment.
And a new parking space right outside her door. And she pays
$525.
To live here, you have to have a job and qualify as low income. This is not subsidized housing. Rents range from $525 for a one-bedroom to $725 for a three-bedroom. Residents get free use of the pool and the playground. Plus, a brand new laundry room and mail area. Everyone knows their neighbor and their neighbor's kids.
Now they can go out and they can, I feel safe and I feel secure, so they can be out playing with the other kids and I don't have a problem.
Police don't come by much anymore. They've gone from 30 calls a month.
For example, in March, there was 3 calls for service here.
Now, it's the ice cream man who visits once a day.
Paseo del Sol has won a number of awards for its renovation. It's also recognized nationally as an outstanding example of crime-free multi-housing because it has so much lighting and open landscaping with no hiding places. When we come back, pictures, pain, and persistence, the odyssey of a prolific local artist. You've probably heard the expression, perception is reality, that how you look at things can make all the difference in the world. That definitely fits for the man you're about to meet. Jeannie Rodden introduces us to a local artist who studied with Ansel Adams and whose love affair with photography persists against great odds.
There are photographs everywhere.
Joseph the artist, as he likes to be called, can find fascination where others might not even look.
Oh, nice little flowers.
Even in the flower bed outside his apartment building in Little Italy, he discovers a world of beauty.
I've never seen this before, and I live here.
For the last 30 years, Joseph has been a world-renowned photographer.
I've never had a desire to do anything else.
His photographs are displayed in Japan, Switzerland, Germany, England.
I worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. My ex-wives will attest to that.
He prefers shots of women and nature and has photographed dozens of famous faces.
Pavarotti is probably the most famous. Bon Jovi, Joe Walsh, the Eagles. I photographed all of them.
Joseph says he finds inspiration in 4 things.
And they are God, Bob Dylan, and then Van Gogh, and number 7. Those are things that really please me.
There's no doubt when you take a look at what he's done.
This is Vincent's face, and then these are some sunflowers, kind of. And then this is 7.
Tell me about the number 7.
I've always, since the 2nd grade, looked at 7 and made me happy.
Few people are interesting enough to be the subject of an entire documentary.
So much photography is in the darkroom. And
this one was made in 1997 by the PBS station in San Jose. And yes, that's Joseph, before he suffered a massive stroke just 1 year ago.
Joseph was walking downtown when the stroke hit him. Right here on the corner of 5th and E, he fell to the ground, paralyzed.
I couldn't speak. I couldn't move my arm.
Joseph was rushed to the hospital and spent 7 days in intensive care.
In the ambulance, on the way to the hospital, I thought about what it would take for me to continue to do this work.
When he got out, life as he knew it had changed forever.
I could not walk without a walker. I could not talk so anyone would understand me.
He spent weeks and months in his small apartment, surrounded by dozens of his photographs tacked up on the walls. Illuminated only by the glare of bare yellow bulbs, Joseph made an amazing recovery.
Every step I took with a walker, every street I crossed, I had one thing on my mind.
That was to get back to doing what he calls God's work.
It was a gift, and my life has been to wanting to share that gift.
What does the future hold for Joseph the artist?
Who would know? Do I think my best days are behind me or in front of me? They are in front of me. I believe I will touch more people now after the stroke.
Since the stroke, Joseph has had exhibits of his photos in downtown coffee houses, including Caffeines on Broadway and Cafe Italia in Little Italy. He's also planning a major exhibit in the country of Italy this summer.
Milan, Florence, and Tuscany.
Across the world.
I like that.
And just outside his door.
When I walk out the door, I'm finding photographs. Oh, I like this.
It's an inspiring story, but Joseph doesn't think his stroke was an act of nature, does he?
No, he doesn't. He believes it was caused by some Alka-Seltzer Plus tablets he had taken earlier that day.
Is there anything to back that up?
There is actually. There's a study that's been done in the past year that shows a certain ingredient called PPA does increase the risk of stroke.
Does he have any recourse?
Yes, in fact, he's filing a lawsuit because he believes he got a packet that was missed in the recall.
Thanks, Jeannie. When Insider continues, we've done it again. Found yet another place tucked away in the backcountry where, when you walk in the door, you step back in time. How about a trip down memory lane to a store that folks say smells like Grandma's house? As Corey Voss shows us, a Lakeside couple has made a career out of keeping the past alive.
You know, we are merchants, but we're mostly collectors. This is one of my eye catchers until somebody comes along and buys it. That's enough stuff brought out for today. And we're now officially opened, and you see, where are all the customers? They'll be here. Yeah.
And so it goes, along Old Highway 80 at Flynn Springs Country Store. Paul and Rita Kress married nearly a half-century ago. In 1970, they bought these buildings and filled the store with their favorite things.
Antiques, cheese, and candy.
And that's it?
That's it.
And can you make a living at that?
We've been doing it for 42 years.
Their antiques represent decades of collecting.
This is the kind that my grandma had.
Some, you know what they are. Others, like this toaster, you might not. Many of the really old, really rare things are off limits.
Not for sale. They can't be replaced.
But here, authentic can also mean old-fashioned. They've stocked the shelves with longtime faves, like peanut patties, Mary Jane's, Jordan almonds.
Would that be enough?
And 20 flavors of candy sticks, 10 cents each.
People will come in and they'll buy 20 and 30 of them at a time.
They also carry the famous Layman's Fudge. Most of the cheese comes from Wisconsin. It's a big seller. So is sarsaparilla, a root beer born a century ago.
This I sell 10 to 1 over Coca-Cola.
When I was a little girl, my grandfather, who I called Papa, used to give me horehound candies as a treat, and I haven't had one since I was about 10 years old. And that's what's special about this place. It takes you back.
Teresa LaFazia brings out-of-towners here.
Oh, they love it. I remember my parents had this, or I remember my aunt had that, or the candy. I haven't seen that in ages.
Indeed, you can't help but reflect on an era gone by. The owners feel the passage of time, too. They're now in their mid-70s.
I had polio when I was 2. And if you live long enough when you have polio, all the symptoms come back again.
And they have. Now Rita struggles to climb to their home above the store, and work is more tiring. But they refuse to dwell on tomorrow. After all, their passion is for yesterday.
You know, it's just something that we like to do. We feel like, oh, look at this old thing, so Paul will refinish it and we'll sell it. We feel that we've saved something. We've saved something for posterity.
And they'll continue as long as time allows. Corey Voss.
It's a very, very good life.
Channel 4, San Diego.
If you want more information on this or any of our stories, check out 4SD.com. I'm Dennis Morgino. For all of us here at Channel 4, thanks for watching.